Who do you say that I am? Jesus asks this question after asking about the crowds, which, the crowds say all sorts of different things. But Jesus then asks that more personal question. Who do you say that I am? This is probably the most important question we can ask in our lives. Who do we say that Jesus is? And not just what's the proper theological answer. The fact that we might be able to quote the theological doctrines of the church, that He is the incarnate Word, united in one prosopon, one hypostasis with the divine Word and the human body and nature of Jesus, does absolutely nothing for us. If it doesn't mean something in our lives. I think probably everyone here could probably answer the textbook answer that, well, Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God. He's the second person of the Blessed Trinity that's become one of us. It's what we celebrate at Christmas. I think we could probably all say that. But the question is, what do our lives profess? Who do our lives profess that Jesus is? That's a more difficult question. I know, looking at my life, the choices that I make, they don't always profess that Jesus is the Christ. They more often profess that I want to be in charge of my life, and Jesus is a nice person, but that's great. I have my own plan. But if Jesus is God, if Jesus is who He says He is, then that means it needs to have a profound effect on our lives, in what our choices are. So, Peter answers, right? You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And then Jesus says to him, Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you. And I say to you, you are Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church. A lot of times we think about, we want to follow Jesus, or we like Jesus, He's pretty nice. But this whole church thing, it's a nice thing to gather with, but, I don't really put too much stock in it. But you see, if Jesus is God, and He is establishing a church, He's not just doing it because He thinks it might be a nice way for you to spend your Sunday mornings. He's doing it because He says, this is my body. This is the bride. She has the same authority that I have. That's what Jesus is saying. He's saying, I'm giving you the keys to the kingdom. It's making reference back to the first reading that we hear today, or about Eliakim, how he is given the keys to be able to open and to shut. He becomes the prime minister of the kingdom. And the prime minister of the kingdom basically has the authority to speak in the name of the king. And Peter is given this authority by Jesus to speak in the name of the king. But a lot of times we say, well, I like the king, but I don't really like the kingdom. I like Jesus, but I don't like His church. But if we say that we believe that He is God, then He chose to set up this church for a particular reason. To draw us to Almighty God, so that the gates of hell will not prevail against it. This is no merit on the part of the popes, that they have this ability that they can speak infallibly about faith and morals. It's not because there's some sort of special wonderful things, but because Jesus knows we're a bunch of slobs and we're going to get it all wrong. And so He says, okay, I'm going to make sure that you get it right. I promise you, when you speak on faith and morals authoritatively, you will not be wrong. This is so needed. We need this authority. I know, because if I'm trying to figure it out on my own, I could go any sorts of different ways. But Jesus gives us the church. He gives us the authority of Peter. He gives us this Pope so that we can grow closer to Him. And you see, all of this is about love. All of this is about love. Even the name Pope, it comes from a word that is the same word in Latin and Italian, papa. Now, for those of you who don't know what papa means, it means daddy. Now, just to be clear, if you end up going to Rome at any point and the Pope happens to be going by and you hear the crowd shouting, don't join in saying, Viva la Papa! Because if you say Viva la Papa, you're saying, long live the potato. It's Viva il Papa. That's long live the Pope. You say Viva la Papa, you say, well, is the Pope gaining weight or something? He's the potato? No. But we look to the Pope, who is not just an authority. He's Father. He's Father. In fact, in the Old Testament we hear today about Eliakim, he says, giving him authority over you, but he says, he shall be a father to the inhabitants of Jerusalem. It's all about this relationship in the church. It's all about getting close to Almighty God. And we need this. We don't always like what the church has to say, but we need it. Let's look at our parents. Or you who are parents, you know this. Parents give their children a bedtime. I don't know if any of you have ever had a child that has not rebelled against the bedtime. I know I did. We don't like our bedtimes. And our parents give us a bedtime not because they hate us or they want to domineer over us, but because they love us. They want us to be healthy. They want us to grow strong. They say, eat your vegetables. Not because they say, we want to make sure that you can eat all this stuff that tastes bad. Mwah, ha, 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 ha. But because they love us and they want us to grow strong. You know this. Of course you know this. And this is the authority of the church. She is mother. The Pope is Father. And the authority is given to us so that we can grow closer to Almighty God, that we can grow in the health of our souls, so that we can get to heaven and be with God for all eternity. Do we believe this? What we do practically in terms of our relationship with Almighty God, our relationship with the church, that points to what we answer when we say, or when Jesus says to us, "Who do you say that I am?"